Nice. So yeah, we would be focusing on tapping from their wealth of knowledge, experience about what they have been doing, and specifically, we as linguists, what we can do to perhaps serve them better in that sense of things. So yeah, we would have each of them answer just questions. So the questions are basically no right answers. They're just sharing their experience. Okay, for me, I found this issue and I solved it this way. For me, I didn't find something like that, and we can proceed with the question. So tactically, we have about 15 questions. So I am not sure whether we'll be able to cover everything. So we can just kind of skim through some. So starting on top of the question, I would ask Samuel to Saad, do you want to introduce the speakers or you don't have any introduction for them?
Sorry, somebody.
Yes, Saad is going to, I was thinking Saad is going to give you introduction. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, not you, Samuel, it's Saad. Saad, are you there? No?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah. So I would just leave you to do that before we start.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to another session in the Africa Computational Linguistics Summer School. Today is, I think, the second to the last day of the summer school, and we have in our midst two personalities that have or are doing very well in the language technology industry, and we are going to maybe ask them questions, and maybe they will put us through, and we'll know and have insights on how they become successful in the industry. And today, one of those people is Chris Emezue. Forgive me if I do not pronounce your name very well. So he is a mathematician, a computer scientist, and founder of Lanfrica, an innovative platform that is transforming how we access and index African language resources. Chris's expertise spans natural language processing, causality, and reinforcement learning, with a research focus on applying AI in complex real-world contexts. Beyond academia, he is also a driven entrepreneur, using technology to bridge information gaps and create inclusive tools that amplify African voices in AI. His dual perspective as a researcher and founder gives him a unique lens into both the technical and human aspects of building meaningful AI systems. And the other person we have today is Samuel Rutunda. He is the Chief Technology Officer and Research Lead at Digital Umuganda, a Rwandan AI company that is committed to developing language technology for African languages. Digital Umuganda has spent the last 5 years building datasets, models, and full-scale NLP solutions, including speech recognition, text-to-speech, machine translation, sentiment analysis, and more. In his role as CTO, Samuel has led the development of life-changing tools like Mbaza, the COVID-19 USSD chatbot that reached over 4 million users in Rwanda, and a gender-based violence chatbot with over 240,000 users and 2 million plus interactions, both designed to ensure inclusive and accessible information delivery. As a researcher, he has published over 7 peer-reviewed papers, with 6 focused on NLP for African languages He's also an active contributor to the African AI community, serving as co-lead of Mbaza NLP, organizer for Deep Learning in Daba 2025 in Kigali, coordinator of AI Saturdays in Kigali, member of the Masakani community. In today's talk, we are going to learn a lot from these two personalities. So please join me all in giving them a warm welcome. You are welcome. Please,
Yeah, thank you
can
so
go
very
ahead.
much. Yeah, that was really interesting. So yeah, I'm happy to see that they come around and they accepted our invitation. I'm sure a lot of people are still trying to join. Please try to accept them as I move with the questions. All right, so starting with the questions, I have one question. So I think I will rotate it. I will start with Chris, then I will start with Samuel, then I will start with Samuel, then I will start with Chris, and I'll go with Chris, and then I intertwine the discussion like that. So I will start with Chris. So you can see the way the trend is going now about AI technology and everything like that as pertaining to African languages. So what do you think linguists should be focusing on at this point? What do you think we should be doing to better position ourselves to serve you founders, for example, in this AI technology? So what do you think we should be doing? What would you suggest? What direction should we be following?
Thank you. Thank you, Samuel, for the question. I will start by saying I am not a linguist. So, yeah, I'm not coming from the expertise of I'm a linguist, and so I'm telling you what to do. And I think I'm coming from the perspective of someone who has been involved in the direction of language technology involving African languages. Not necessarily as a founder, but just working in different projects, being involved in different communities and different works there. What should linguists be doing in this case? What I think, I mean, I didn't pre-plan the answer, so I'm just talking from my heart. I think first and foremost is really like, I think it's important to figure out how you as a linguist can get your, so there's this my little experience interacting with different linguists is when you think of language technology, you tend to often see it as some computer science thing somewhere far away that doesn't really connect with you as a linguist. You know, if you're like a student or someone who studied linguistics uh somewhere around, you, you were not really taught about language technology and the role of the linguist in it. So many times there tends to be this mentality that language technology is something different from linguistics, and linguists have to be just annotators or recorders. But my experience has taught me that language technology, especially in the African context, can only get better with the inclusion of linguists. And the reason is simple. The way we do language technology in the global north, so in the America and Canada and Europe, it doesn't work if we use that same language technology method for Africa, because the African languages are just very linguistically diverse and complex. The context, the African context is very different. We don't have thousands and lots of power, copper. We don't even have the compute power to work with such large data. We don't have very strong internet. So the context of the African region is different. And this is an opportunity for linguists, because what it shows you is that we cannot just copy and paste language technology methods from the global north. We need to engineer our own language technology that comes from understanding the language and the context we're working in. So I see this as a unique opportunity for linguists. And the way I think about it is your role is not just being an annotator or recorder. You can actually be more than that. You can actually, so a lot of the work I do with Samuel at Linguistic Island is also empowering linguists to actually, we call it like data business, where you're actually creating these technologies. You are really involved in creating these technologies and making decisions about how the technology is created. The work we're doing with Niger Voices is also, you are creating this technology and these resources. So like the data sets, you're creating them yourselves. You're not like being an annotator, but you're actually managing your own project to create for your language. So what I'm trying to say is, I think linguists can do more than just be annotators. They can actually be creators and actively participate in language technology. And the current landscape of language technology in Africa is challenging and presents an opportunity for linguists who are bold, courageous, not afraid to learn, not afraid to make mistakes, to actually take up the mantle of doing more for language technologies and with language technologies. Yes.
Yeah, that's extremely profound. Yeah, linguistics is more than just sitting down and annotating data. We should be thinking of creating resources. And I think Lanfrica actually has this idea of data farm too, where we are farming, we're on the field and we are farming, we are producing a lot of things. I think I love the idea behind data farming. So now to Samuel Rutunda, what do you think from your experience? Like, what do you think? What direction do you think they should be going? Like, what would you advise? What would you be your utmost advice for linguists? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. Thank you for the invite. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon for those who are here. And looking at AI language technology within the African context, I'm looking at it two ways. The first is the infrastructure. So language technology, AI needs infrastructure. So with those infrastructure, I can say there is the human infrastructure, the human capital, and that includes all of us. So it's the entire community, including the linguist who plays a very big, important role. So that's within the mind. There is the compute. AI needs compute. And then there's the data sets. AI needs data sets. And then, yeah, we can even talk, for example, capital, money. So there is that infrastructure. And things have been going that around. But then these days, I'm looking at the new paradigm where we focus on the end user or the end goal. So language technology, AI is part of the fourth industrial revolution, and it will drive access to information. So that means that things will move faster, we'll have intelligence at the palm of our hand. But how do we benefit our local fellow people? I think that's the question that we should ask. So there's different ways. There's very different ways. Sharing knowledge. You know, when you look in the past, even, for example, for Kinyarwanda, our grammar was written by people from outside. And then people from Rwanda, they started taking ownership, but from a linguistic side, I think there's still some gaps. But there is a difference when someone from outside writes, which they can provide a different perspective, which is needed. And then there's a difference when someone from within writes. They can also provide a different perspective. However, looking at the beneficiaries, which are in most of the time the local people, given the shared culture and background, there's a huge advantage um, to have some knowledge from someone from within the same culture. So now looking at the end user, how can we leverage our knowledge, our linguistic knowledge, and how can we leverage existing tools? And I think that's the paradigm. And to be honest, there are multiple ways people can take. We can explore, I think I explained how we can share the knowledge. There is how we can create data sets, there's how we can analyze. But for me, I think is how do I contribute to help solve the local need? And it's very varied. It can be how do I, using my linguistic knowledge, and it doesn't even have to be local languages. It can be even these big languages we use, English, French, Portuguese, and others. But how does it benefit people around me? How can I do something to contribute? Because, for example, when Masakane was created, yeah, everybody was like, oh, I have my time. Some knew how to code, some didn't know how to code, but everybody was willing to contribute something for the community. And I think that's the drive. How can I help people? Obviously and ideally, it's within our language and within our surrounding, but even we live in a global world. But if we look at it and we think from a user, from the end user, how does my work will contribute? Then the rest start coming. So the knowledge part, the human part, the capital part, the infrastructure, they will slowly follow. But and I'm staying a bit high level given it's a very packed question and given the different backgrounds we have. But for me, in conclusion, I would say just look around you and say, how can I contribute given what I have? And from there, it's a start. Before you know, things will create more things. Yeah, I think, yeah, then the rest we can go into the specifics, but for me, the key thing is how does my work contribute to help people around me, especially my knowledge and my skills and everything I have. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. So we should focus within ourselves and see what we can do to contribute, given that we need human capacity and human infrastructure. It starts from us. So that's very interesting to hear from Samuel. So Samuel, again, sorry, I would start with you. The first question, the next question I'll be asking is, how do you approach building language technology solutions for African languages with limited digital resources? How do you approach building these technologies when you know that you have limited digital resources? And in a short way you can put it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I'll say most of us, we are still young. And if there's a commodity we have is time and energy. So that'll be a very good start. Yeah, so these are small steps. You know, and I've said it before, one of my hero within the community, her name is Kathleen Siminyo. And the reason I remember when I joined this community, my background was not NLP. I just wanted to do something within the language. I saw there was an opportunity, and I just wanted to contribute. So I looked around and I was like, what has been done in Kinyarwanda? And then she did some work on Medium. And the fact that there was something there was like, oh, this is a start. I can actually do something. So there is no small start. There's no small work, particularly from a data set. Even though these days my paradigm is now looking at the user, but the user needs data. So data is just takes time. So if you have time, you can create something, or you can work with people to create something. Yeah. So work on the data, work on the data, work on the knowledge. I think knowledge is expensive somehow in Africa, given the infrastructure is limited. So if you are able to disseminate the knowledge, I think that's a big thing. And obviously there is collaboration, which is how we are here, all of us. Yeah. So I'll say those things. Yeah, data, knowledge, collaboration, and then before you know, it starts small. Those are things you can just wake up and you start doing, and then before you know, it grows. So while you're still having, oh, my work will contribute to help these people, I think people, similar things attract. So people who share your vision and desire will gather towards you. So
Right.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. That's profound. So we need data. Linguistics Island needs to create more data sets, and that is true. Chris, how do you approach creating these things when you have limited, you know that you have limited resources? How have you approached it?
Yeah, I think having limited resources can be a disadvantage or an advantage, depending on how you look at it. So it's natural to see it as a disadvantage because it's like, well, look at these people have, this company has millions of dollars and they have all the compute and everything. And me, I'm just doing my little thing and I don't have it. So yes, that could be a disadvantage. But on the other hand, I think this is just beyond thinking, like we even have examples of that show that it's really how you look at it. It presents a unique opportunity to think about things differently. You see what really transforms the world is when people take a step back and think about something differently and say, what if we tried this instead? Because maybe this doesn't really work so well. There's a lot of following the momentum where we're following the bandwagon of this is how things are done, so we should just do it. But when you're hit with low resources, it sort of forces you to think
rethink,
differently
yeah.
and rethink. So my advice is try not to think of it as a challenge and really embrace it and see how you can rethink how you do things. I mean, one good example, let me talk about the example with someone who's here. You have Samuel from Digital Umuganda, and what makes them so well known, like the impact they made is really rethinking how you collect data in Africa, right? So if you were living in the global north, somewhere with lots of resources, or you had lots of resources as a company, you had millions of dollars, you would just, okay, hire people and pay them, collect data, that's it. But you don't have millions of dollars, but you have an ambition. So how do you work? And you have a community of people with the same ambition. How do you work with them to collect data? And they say, okay, we have Umuganda in our country. Let's make it on a digital level where the community comes together and they create these resources while learning about important things about technology. And then they brought it together. And then they have this amazing way. I think they created, back then it was the largest African speech data set of thousands of resources for their language. So this is an example of thinking differently. And there are other examples. There are many examples. There's also the Niger Voices example with, in the context of Nigeria. So before, if you're looking for data sets in Nigeria, you're seeing like 20 hours, 50 hours, 42 hours, 80 hours. And it's okay, but it's small. And a group of people came together and said, let's think differently. We don't have so much money, but we believe that there's a way, by just making a few changes to how we think about data, we can actually use the same small money and create thousands of hours, or at least hundreds of hours. And so that led to the Niger Voices dataset. And now suddenly, if you want to do something for Igbo, Hausa, or Yoruba, you don't have 80 hours, you have 600 hours, 600 plus hours for each of these languages. And you don't have 2 speakers, 10 speakers, you have 5,000 speakers. So these are examples of thinking differently about how we do things. And it affects the whole pipeline. Thinking differently about how you create data, thinking differently about how you build models, thinking differently about how you build communities, thinking differently about how linguistics comes into this field of language technology, thinking differently about how linguists play a role in language technology. So just to give a concrete example about thinking differently for linguists, in a lot of researchers, when we want to build models, we always think, just get a model, get data, and then use model, train model and data, and voila, there you go. But that doesn't work on the African context because you don't have lots of data. So if you take small data and train your model, then your model doesn't perform well. It does not understand Yoruba voices well. It does not understand Yoruba context well, or Yoruba diacritics or English diacritics. It does not understand how to even write the characters well in Hausa. So it's not working. And this calls for thinking differently. And there's a few researchers who have tried to bring in their linguistics into these models and say, maybe don't just use only data. What if you also try to use this linguistic knowledge by looking at maybe the topology of the language, bringing in maybe the morphological analysis of the language and using that to sort of do some surgery on the model so that the model is not just relying on just data, it's also leveraging the true linguistic knowledge of the model. And suddenly you have a model that doesn't need lots of data for the African language and can perform very well. It understands the morphological combination and nuances in a language, and it can actually give you coherent text in the language. This field is still catching on, but I dare say, like you can quote me on this, in the next 5-10 years, if there are going to be models or language technologies that truly serve African people, and by truly, I mean like you can take this technology on the streets of your country, go on the streets of Lagos and be talking, and then like you're using this technology and it works, or like you're driving in Abuja and you're like using a Google map kind of thing and you're telling it, take me here in Igbo, and it actually works. If there are going to be technologies like that in the next 5 years, it will need people thinking differently about how we build technology by bringing in the linguistic knowledge. And I think, yeah, that's an opportunity. And I personally, in my research field, that's something I'm very passionate about. And that's something I'm working on. I know Samuel has also, or Lauren Reju Samuel, not Rutunda, I'm just specific here. Samuel has also been doing that. I mean, even Samuel Rutunda and his group, they've been doing that because it was I think from their team that brought out the first Kenya bird, right? The first bird model that actually uses the morphological information of the language in the model. And that made a lot of impact. And then recently, the best ACL paper went to a lady, an African lady, who really just said, hey, if you're building a model for African language, you need linguistic information, and here's how to use it using the linguistic topology, and here's what you get, and voila, you have so much results. So you can see a trend that when it comes to African languages, we really need to think differently. And so what I'm trying to say is having low resources, it could be an opportunity that makes you think differently about how you do things.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, you're right. The lady at UC, I think University of California, I don't know where. Yeah, she got the best paper. She did something on typology, actually, morphological typology of these Bantu languages. Yeah. And just to tip in what Chris just said, most of these AI technologies actually, focus on most of their work on Bantu languages. I am always shocked when I see that. That is why Niger Voice is very profound, which is focusing more on the West African languages, which is Niger Congo. I'm not sure Chris is aware of this advantage, but he doesn't know what he has done. So what you did in Niger Voice, it's not only unique in terms of the technology, it's unique linguistically. If you check many linguistics papers, especially when it comes to how do we learn language, how do we acquire language, they focus a lot on Bantu languages. Barely would you see a linguistics work that is talking about how do we even learn these things that is from West African part of the world. So you see works on Swahili, you see works on even Zulu, but you barely see work on Yoruba or Hausa or Igbo that is making the trend. I mean, so that is very, very interesting. So you've answered a lot of questions with the way you provided your answers. So I got two questions in the chat. So I'm thinking I should just throw you one more question before we dive into that. And can you share your experience with integrating African languages into this system, these chatbots, this can you share your experience, your challenges? What did you do that failed? What did you do that worked? And like, what would you advise? Okay, if you want to do a task like maybe speech system, don't do A, don't do B. You can do C because I tried C and it worked. So what are the challenges you face? What did you try that didn't work? What did you try and you never knew to work and it really worked? And how did you incorporate these things in your research? I'm starting with Chris, then we'll go to Rutunda now.
Okay, I see. I did talk about, in the last thing I said, I think if some of the things I talked about previously incorporate what you're saying.
Sure.
So I would like to hear Samuel Rutunda, and then maybe if I want to add to it while he's talking, I can think of more things, because if not, I would just repeat everything I said. So I would like to hear Samuel and then think while he's talking, and then see if I have something new to add. That's okay.
So, first of all, I think the fact that, and here I'm talking as the team or as the community, given that, yeah, it's not just my work, but it's been our work, I would say. The fact that we worked on Kinyarwanda, and if you look at papers talking of NLP or computational linguistics on Kinyarwanda, at least by a Rwandan, I think before 2019, there was only one. And that was in 2007. But now the plethora of papers that have come out, and I know Chris can attest to it. Yeah, Kinyarwanda has been at the forefront. So just us stepping up and saying, oh, we are going to do for Kinyarwanda, allowed even those who are not necessarily interested in Kinyarwanda to work on it. Yeah, so I remember there was there was a model that was trained by someone from Russia. They just saw the data, they're like, oh, okay, let me train the data. So when you show interest and you start working on it, you attract more people to start working on it. And looking at, for example, LLMs for Kinyarwanda, I think they are doing 90%, over 90% when we judge from a linguistic accuracy. But this, if we had not stepped up, and if the community has not stepped up to say, okay, let's do something, it couldn't have been done. Obviously, one anecdote is there was a work we were doing where when LLM came, they were still limited in Kinyarwanda. And then we're trying different methods to have them talk to Kinyarwanda. And then before we know, I think at that time it was OpenAI, they just released a beta model that understood Kinyarwanda. So up to now, I don't know what they did. And it was frustrating, to be honest. But looking at the big picture, everybody gained, because now I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can use their model, although there are some technicalities. So yeah, when you show interest, things work. But then when you show interest, someone else can come and maybe better resources, they can do it. So that's one challenge you might face and we faced, because it took me a while to come to term. I'm just speaking it casually, but you are looking at maybe 6 months of work, and before you know, your work has been made irrelevant. It's kind of sad. But then another thing is the tools of Kinyarwanda have made a huge improvement, which, looking, like I said, 2019, there was basically nothing. There's something that actually is being used, but there's still a long road ahead. So now, one thing I'm currently looking at is there is the low resource languages, but then there's the low resource settings. Low resource settings is not everyone has a computer, not everyone has a smartphone, not everyone knows how to read, not everyone knows how to use these tools. So how do you build something that will support them? And then how do you build it within a cultural relevant fashion? So those are still some roads ahead. I can take courage that we came from nothing to something, but there's still a road ahead where now is how do we make it available to everyone? I won't be building it by myself. There's a community, and then there's even the other players around who will contribute. But the fact that I'm laying the brick, yeah, it's contributing. Yeah, definitely. And then we are different. So we are different from we are different. Everybody is different. We are created different. So I think we need just to emphasize our uniqueness. So every language is unique. Every person is unique. We think differently. We act differently. So when we can leverage that, I think, yeah, personally, from my experience, a lot of good things can come along the way.
Yeah, that's that's a very touching story. And even in the linguistics community, you might be working on a paper and just someone from nowhere just published the paper before you and they count that as plagiarism. I faced that issue like I think last year even. I was working on something I thought was a very novel idea, and then I submitted it, and the editor just said, "No, look at this. It was out last 2 weeks." I was like, "Oh no!" But I didn't talk to this person, and it has actually been a culture among people that don't want to communicate, and I think it's a huge syndrome in the society where researchers are working and they are not communicating because they are afraid somebody is going to steal their idea. Then it turns out that when you didn't communicate, then somebody somewhere is doing what you're doing, and because they have faster system, they can just but if you know somebody within your area of interest, it's just good to talk to them and see what they are doing and see how they are doing it. You can better work together as a team than competing unnecessarily among yourself. So I don't know whether Chris has got something to say now.
Yes, I do. I think
I know I
what you
know
started talking about reminded me of something very important, and I think this maybe connects more with the research field. I believe we might have some people who are already researchers here or looking to be researchers. Yes, we're now in a new landscape where, there's this thing called Zygest, where it's like you have an idea. So the way my mom used to say it is like when an idea comes to you from God or from the universe, it's also going to other people. So it's very hard to have an idea and not, sooner or later someone else has a similar idea. But I'm not saying that like you're afraid to share your idea. What I'm just trying to say is that we're in a fast-paced world. Things move fast now. So collaboration is important and is most times better than competition. And what I'm also noticing is that it's important, as much as you're doing impactful work, it's important to think of how to get your work out there, get people to know about what you're doing. There are a lot of people doing something very important that a lot of us don't know about and might never know about because there's just so much information out there. So, if I was to give you one personal advice that would really help you, as you're working and doing your thing, whether you're a researcher or you're a worker or you're a linguist or you're a student, think about your brand. Think about how, and when I say brand, I don't mean like company brand and social media, like the TikTok stuff. I just mean like, think about how to create awareness, let people know of what you're doing. It's very important. It brings you in touch with other people. It brings you in touch with networking, funding. Many of you might be looking for career opportunities or opportunities. It brings you in contact with that. So what I'm just trying to say is think about how to make people know what you're doing and the things you're doing. That really, really changed my life. When I was a student in Russia, I had these great ideas of to do this and do that and do that, but I was just doing some of them and publishing in some local journals and just trying. But things that helped me, one was joining a community. So joining the Masakane community. So that's collaboration, basically. Meeting people, collaborating with people on projects. When you collaborate, you learn a lot. You learn from different people. You learn how to make things work. So collaborating and being hardworking to actually really engage in these collaborations. The second thing that helped me was also putting my work out there. So I remember it was around that time I finally created a Twitter account and a LinkedIn account. And I really took my LinkedIn account seriously, like really putting the things I'm doing, like, my profile. And then when I would do something and like trying to like be doing that, thinking about if we're doing a project, it's not just we do a project for 6 months and then bye-bye, but like what's the output that we can share with people to learn about what we're doing? Maybe a research paper. Oh, we write a research paper. You like what Samuel is alluding to. It's not I really think gone are the days where you write the research paper and then you spend 2 years trying to get your research paper in a journal. I think those days are past. Like it won't work anymore. if you're trying to do that. And that's why you have preprints, you have conferences, you have workshops. So preprints allow you, for example, you write a research paper or a paper, maybe not research, and you just like upload it somewhere and voila, now you have a preprint. You don't have to wait for 1 year for journals to take the time and review and everything, because it's important to get your work out there. That's what matters. And then, there's some events or workshops or conferences, you try and sign up. I remember back then, Bona and I used to like sign up for conferences and we had no idea how we're going to get there, no money. We're just like, yeah, let's just put our name there. And then let's fish around and check it. There's these people saying the very first conference I attended, I think, was it EMNLP? With that took us to the other part of the world. The very first conference I attended, the way I got the funding for that was by applying to be a volunteer in the conference. So if you're a volunteer in the conference, they waive your registration fee. So that's how I didn't have to pay for registration. Then by being a volunteer, okay, not just be a volunteer, we also applied to a work, submitted a paper to a workshop. We did a very simple thing about machine translation for African languages, and we submitted to a workshop in the conference. And so the workshop had like a form where they were saying, we're trying to increase representation. So if you think you might need help for travel, let us know. And we filled the form immediately, and we were lucky and they gave us the funding. And then for the conference, it was by being a volunteer that we didn't have to pay registration fees. Of course, I had to be a volunteer by helping out. What I'm trying to say is that there are more opportunities than you realize. There are different ways to like get to stuff by volunteering, signing up for this, signing up for that. So you need to really like be active, especially in Nigeria. You guys be active, no dull. If you're really checking out for these opportunities when they come out and really trying them, even if you think you're not good enough, just trying them. That's one. Second one is collaboration. Really have the eye for collaborating with people. It is difficult to collaborate with people. It's hard. Dealing with humans is hard, but I have found that in the end, it's worth it. So collaboration. And then 3 is when you do stuff, really think about how to get it out. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting. I will share like two, if they need example of what you just said, I will share two experiences too. So I got into neurospace internship by not doing a lot of interview, by just talking to someone, and they just interviewed me right on the spot, and they were like, okay, you can do this. Yes, I can do it. This is the data I have. You have this data, really? And I got on the job right on the spot. I got into my ambassadorship position with Cohere now. Cohere is a big name, was at Kigali conference. So I was just sitting down beside somebody who happened to be the CEO. I didn't know. And they were talking about data. Now I just made a statement. She said, really? So why did you think that way? And I began to explain. And for me, I'm always prepared to share these things. So I'm always prepared. I have a target. If I'm going to conference, I tell myself I must bring one thing. I don't know how, I don't know what. I'm there to pick one thing. I'm scouting for people that do what I love to see, and then I'm hitting them right on the run. And then I talked to this woman, and then she was like, "Really? Then can we talk after this session?" I said, "Yes." After the session, we had just sat. We stood somewhere in the corner of the conference and we talked. I got it right there. I mean, I got into that position right then. No interview, no. I mean, that was some considerations, right? But it was just right there, and I got into it. It was later, like I think after like 3 months. Okay, now it is time to do this and do that, and it went a long way in my career. So yeah, putting yourself out there, attending conferences, talking to people, collaborating would be the way to move. So I will quickly ask 2 questions here. Kindly tell us from your, okay, I think any of you can just answer this, right? Samuel can answer, Chris can answer. I don't know who would be able to answer, who would think first in answering. Kindly tell us from your experience and knowledge whether nuances observed in African languages, I think, have been incorporated in AI, especially providing accurate or comprehensive quality data, or say grammar for such languages is concerned? If not, how can such aspect of language be incorporated? Before you answer, I think Chris cited a woman that won the ACL award. She did something on typology, actually, morphological typology, syntax by typology. I could share the paper. She did something there. She incorporated linguistic things, and there are a lot of works like that did that. I think the man from UMass from Kigali, Antoine, does that too. He does something on morphological analysis of Kinyarwanda, and he has put it in machines. And I can count some works here. So yes, there are a lot of comprehensive work to do. And one thing I'm hoping to see is that we do something very similar to what Bergosh is doing. So Bergosh did created like a timeline. I'm still studying it, and I think hopefully I'll be able to grasp it soon to go from speech to syntax. So you mentioned the grammar. So there's somebody doing that, is a linguist. What he does is he trains this model to get the speech, only from the speech, and it will write out the syntax, the grammar of the language. So I will leave this question to Chris and Samuel. I don't know who is answering first. Tell us if they have incorporated the structure of African languages into this AI, and if not, how do you think that can happen? So I don't know who is going first.
I'll let Samuel take the lead on this, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so one thing we
Okay.
need to be aware is
Oh, yeah,
there are over 2,000 African languages. So there's still a long way, but then it's crazy to see that it's been maybe 5 or 6 years that a lot of this work has been done for African languages. When you look for computational linguistics or NLP papers on other languages, you can go back to the 50s or 60s or even, so you can go back in time. But when you look at our languages, it's just very recent. So for me, looking at the progress, I see there's a big leap. There's a big leap compared to other languages. Although we still want to compare to English and French and Chinese and others, but things are coming. And to be honest, the good thing that I like is we are part of the conversation. And I think that's what this meeting is about. We are part of the conversation. So in the past, you know, an operating system will come, we'll just install it and we'll use it. But now we are part of the conversation. Now even the reason we are asking this, if it's there, is because you know your language and you can know the capacity and you can say, oh, it's still not there. So if it's not there, it means you can actually do something about it. So for me, I like that part. And yeah, as we continue to work on it, as we continue to provide our input, however small it is, I think we are contributing. And over time, things will start growing exponentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that was profound. Chris, do you have anything now?
Okay, the question was around if we're seeing some of these nuances being implemented in current technology, right?
Yes.
Short answer is yes, we are, but not enough of them. So it's not established yet. It's in the nascent stage, so it's still growing. So for one good example is this hybridization of linguistics and language technology, where you're building the models with the knowledge by infusing linguistic knowledge in the model. That's one, and I said how you have Kenya Bird and you have the lady that won the ACL paper. And yeah, so these are examples. You also have on the data side, you have data creation examples like Niger Voices and Digital Umuganda and so many examples. But these are, upcoming examples. So I think there's still more room to think of different ways of doing what we do currently. Think of different ways of creating data. Think of different ways of building the models. Think of different ways of providing the services that we give to the local communities with this language technology. They also think of who we're actually serving with local technologies. And sometimes we like, if you think I've talked with some entrepreneurs who are like, oh yes, Chris, I want to build some service that can help maybe drivers in Lagos, help them navigate. And I want this to be like this ASR that will do this and do that and do that. It sounds nice to think of, to have these ambitions of how it will work. But sometimes thinking about from the user side of view, like Samuel said, like from the user's point of view, thinking about the problem also helps. Like, okay, but the drivers really want to be doing this. Maybe it's quite noisy in the, as the driver is driving and they may not want to be talking to an ASR. Maybe they have there's a way that they would prefer more than just this, so like really thinking about why we're building these language technologies, who we're building it for, what our linguistics role in that. Rethink. That's just kind of what I'm campaigning for. And there's a little bit of that happening and it's showing some promise. And I think that's one of the futures. And I think there needs to be more of that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very true. So the second question is, in view of the reality that AI algorithms would in nearest future render humans redundant in certain careers, what ethics and policies can be introduced into computational linguistics to slow down or stop AI from achieving this? In view of the reality that AI algorithms would in the nearest future render human services, it's like certain careers, redundant, what ethics and policies can be introduced into computational linguistics to slow down or stop AI from doing that, from rendering this career redundant? I think I would start. I would say that I don't think there is anything we can really do about it. We can think of an ethical and responsible way of doing it, but if there will be innovations, there will always be, in some sense, death of some things. There used to be a time where we have land phone at home, and we don't go about with our phone in our pocket. Now we have it. The people that are creating that now, they have to be out of business, right? There used to be a time where things are different. We didn't used to have Android, for example. We used to have like BlackBerry at a time. It was heavily on Nokia. Then we have Nokia phones. Now we have Android, and the people making others are gone. But I think I share the sentiment that this is not what that is saying, in the sense that the amount of people that AI is covering is wider in some sense than what we have in that. But I think that in some ways we should settle for the fact that when there is an innovation, then there is bound to be some redundancy about some services that are surrounding such innovation. So, but I don't know who is starting. I don't know that Chris is starting or Rutunda about. Okay, so what do you think we should be doing? Because some careers in the nearest future are going to be redundant. I think Rutunda wants to start.
Yeah. No, I think to be honest, in my opinion, I think our careers are safe. At least those who are here. And basically AI is working, but it still has some limitations. And if you are moving ahead. If you are learning, if you are being updated, I think your career is safe. But if you just wait, there's a chance that your career might be at risk. But in terms of the risk of AI, there are real implications. As someone who builds AI, I would say I'm within the safe side to say, oh, let's build, let's push innovation. So I'm always been on that side until I started working within the health sector and I started seeing the potential of AI and how it will change our life. That I started noticing that, oh, we need to really think about this carefully. We don't want to stop innovation. We want AI to be the driver of the digital transformation of our countries. But we need to think of the implications. So let me give you one example. The Given that we have little to we have we don't have many doctors and many health workers in Africa, we can experiment how AI can actually help the doctors. So I was talking to some nurses in Rwanda. They meet over 200 patients in a day. And so meeting those 200 patients in a day, you have to treat them and they are treated as doctors basically. So you have to treat them and you have to make sure that you provide them with the best treatment you can. So I can see AI providing support and helping those doctors do their job, those nurses do their job better. But what are the implications? And I'm looking from the privacy perspective. So now, if you want the doctors to do their job better, maybe by capturing passively the conversation between the nurse and the patient, you can get more information. Okay, now that's good. You've helped the patient, you've helped the nurse, everything is all good. And then now we are centralizing our system. Now, once you move to a doctor, the same thing happened given that they're also understaffed. So we are capturing all that information and we are giving it to AI. So what are the implications? Are you going to put your health in a AI system's hand? So those are questions to really think of. And so I looked at health. With justice is still the same case. We are understaffed, so we can use AI now to make sure the justice goes faster. Are you willing to put someone's life and liberty in these tools' case? In education, the teachers, it's always a problem. So now how can AI support? Now you find that AI is leading the conversation. So I am not saying no to those solutions, which I believe they'll be very helpful. But I'm looking at the consequence if you don't plan it very well. And to be honest, it's still an ongoing conversation. Everybody should contribute. And that's why I said when I started that I'm shifting my paradigm to not just looking at the infrastructure, to look at the end user. Because ultimately this AI will be used by me, will be used by you, will be used by all of us. So now how can we maximize the utilities so that it will benefit us to the best of our ability while minimizing the risk? It's an open question, but it's something that we are all part of the conversation. It's not just a few people, it's not just for one person, it's for all of us to contribute. So you can contribute. I was talking to someone recently and they were saying, and I think the example was maybe Nigeria or Ghana. They were saying there is a term when you go to a doctor and you say, "Doctor, I have bad blood." There is something that it means. And if you tell me, to be honest, I don't know what bad blood is. So can the AI understand those realities? And can they provide care despite those realities? And as linguists, I think that's where your work comes in. How do you guide AI so that it can provide the right realities? And obviously from the linguist, there's always a tension between the pragmatic side, where you want language to be used as it is, and then the idealistic side, where you want language to be perfect like Académie Française. But you being part of the conversation and you guiding us and you understanding the complexities and the realities and saying, okay, based on my understanding, based on my knowledge, based on my experience, based on my reality, I think we should look at it this way. I think it will greatly contribute to us. So that's why I'm always focused. Let's look around us. So yeah, obviously there are people saying AI will displace us and everything. What's our reality saying? What are the realities? What are we facing? How is AI helping or destroying? And what can I do to contribute? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, that is really, really interesting. Yeah, we should think about how AI is working within our own reality. I think Chris also hinted this before now. Uh, our own reality and see how we can contribute. I mean, it still boils down to the idea behind community. So you should be seeing your community and seeing what you need in your community. And one thing I would like to add is linguists are the ones studying the pragmatical implications of this data. We should be the one thinking about the implications of a statement, so that when we when we give these machines, these languages, we know the implications that surrounding this specific discussion. So in other words, if especially a conversational system, chatbot, everything there that is dealing with language rests a lot on linguistics analysis. So we should be thinking about how we can disambiguate, for example, some implications. As Rutunda was saying, how we can provide expressions to guide these machines. Because as you know, computer is giggle, garbage in, garbage out. If you give it A, it's going to give you A. If you give it B, it's going to give you B. But if you give it A and you wanted to give it B, then you are making a mistake. So linguists should be the one writing the instruction tuning in quotes to how LLMs are learning. So I don't know whether Chris has one or two things to say concerning that.
First and foremost, I agree with and I echo everything Samuel Rutunda said, and also what Olanrewaju Samuel said. I completely agree with you. We shouldn't. There's a lot of buzz, a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype, a lot of social media and everything, but it's really painting the narratives of the global north. Painting their narratives and fears and their experiences, which is fine, but we should really focus on the global south, on our own contexts. So think about how do you imagine your mother, your grandmother? What does AI mean for her? What does it mean? It's not the same as what it means for someone in the global north. Even when we talk about AI and jobs, like sometimes someone says, oh, AI will take over our jobs. And I ask, okay, what jobs in your context, like in Nigeria or in Kigali or in Ethiopia, what jobs exactly do you see AI taking over? And I see that some of them don't really have an answer because they haven't really thought about, okay, for our context, what does this mean? Is they're just for taking a narrative on social media. So it's important to really think about our own context. If we're talking about AI and ethical implications of AI, it should be from the context of my experience and my, if you're Nigerian, like in Nigeria, where you live or in the country that you live, context is everything, and context is very important. Context also help you better understand the problem that you're solving. So, for example, it's like you could say, oh yeah, linguists need to be in language technology. So yeah, let me just go and become in this language technology. But what is language technology to you? What does that mean? So that's context. I know we're using the phrase language technology everywhere, but you might notice that it means different things to different
True.
people. Like,
True.
like Samuel Rutunda says, like the way he sees language technology and who it's serving from his experience, it's different. When I say language technology, I'm thinking of different things. When Samuel or Lauren Wanjo, coming from the linguist side, when he says language technology, he's thinking of different things. So the context is very important. And so when we're having these conversations, when we're thinking about our role and our impact, it's very, very good, very, very important to think of context. And I think one thing that helps with context is really thinking of the people, like Dr. Rutunda said, the end user. So, for example, in Niger Voices, we used to do this very interesting project when we would go on the streets and talk to people about our project. We would always ask them, "What does AI mean to you?" And we would like take some time to just discuss that. And you would find very fascinating things. You would find that some people don't really like they see AI as this shiny thing on social media. And you need to talk with them to really help them like ground it. Oh, so this translation thing that I'm using here is AI. Or this spell checker thing. Like, oh, I'm a barber, I don't use translation, but sometimes, when I'm trying to text somebody on WhatsApp, I notice the spell checker, because I'm typing fast and then it corrects it for me. Oh, that's the AI thing you're talking about? Yes. Interesting. So you see now they have an understanding of this AI. It's no longer this shiny thing up there that would do amazing things for us. It's well grounded. And then you can have meaningful conversations with the people once you have grounded it. So my advice to each of you is take time to find and get your own context and grounding of what language technology, all these things we're talking about, linguistics. Take time to create your own context for yourself. Context is shaped by experience, conversations, talking with people, like you are listening to us talk, and you're like learning more about where we're coming from and what we're doing. And as you're doing all these things, it's shaping your context. As you took part in the summer school, you got to hear a lot of different experts talk, you engage with different things, it's shaping your context. And in the future, as you collaborate and go on your different lives, doing what you're doing and having your experiences, is shaping your context. That is very important. So take time to shape that and always use that. Like, don't ever throw it away. It's very important. Always use that when you're having conversations or you're thinking about things like AI and language technology and your role in that.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, we should domesticate what we say. When we say language is leaving us, LLM is changing the industry. LLM is taking jobs. We should domesticate it. What job? Do you think LLM would drive if you are in Lagos, in Nigeria? Do you think in this very busy area, there will be a time Tesla would work well in Lagos? Even in the US, where they deploy a lot of these self-driving cars, there are a lot of challenges. Now, imagine a case of Lagos where everything is going, even humans need to move within traffic. Do you think we would have such case where drivers are no more needed and then LLMs are the one driving in that chaotic environment? Do you think it's not going to be more dangerous than having humans being on it? Nobody wants to die, and that's the fact. So, if anything is going to threaten their life to their life, they wouldn't be there. So, nobody would deploy an ASR or a system where it will kill people. So, yes, I'm not sure we should domesticate. And that's a very profound. I learned a lot from those words from Chris and Rutunda. So I have a question before I so let me ask my question. It says, what is the best way to monetize African language technology solutions sustainably? And how do you protect African linguistic intellectual property when you are collaborating with these global tech companies? How do you think, what's the best way to monetize African language technology solutions sustainably? And when you are collaborating with these big tech, global tech companies, how have you been able to protect African knowledge, intellectual property? So I don't know who is starting first. Rutunda, are you starting first? I think you've been taking the lead. So there are two in one question. I think it's a two in one question, right?
Okay, can you repeat them for me, please?
So how, when you're collaborating with these global tech companies, how have you been able to protect African knowledge system, African properties, the properties like our language? How have you been able to protect it? And the other side is, in your view, what is the best way to monetize African language solutions, language technology solutions sustainably?
Yeah, so on that one, I think there are different school of thoughts. There are different school of thoughts. So at least the school of thoughts we are from, and though there's been some good development, is the open source. So personally, by experience, I remember when I joined the field, there were these data sets, and I could apply. They will not respond. And I think it was a Helsinki parallel data set. There was one in Kinyarwanda, I could apply, nothing. So the existing data sets by that time were behind the wall. So my background really pushed me to value open source. So a lot of the work we do is open source, but doesn't mean it's the only way. So, for example, currently the new development I mentioned is open source, where you allow it to be used by everyone within, let's say, a certain geographic location. In our case, like Africa. But if a big tech wants to use it, they need to pay. So things have been evolving. So, but there are different ways. But for me, and the key thing I would say is, how do we best serve the people we want to serve? So whether open source or whether monetizing, how do we actually provide value? And I think that's the biggest key thing. And obviously value to who? Yeah, if you sell it to the big tech, you are providing value to the big tech. Hopefully it will come back when the people are using the system. Yeah, but how do we provide value? I think that's the biggest question. So once you've decided, okay, this is why I think I can provide value, and you do it, yeah, it's all good as long as we are all contributing. So in the end, as long as we are part of the conversation, because for me, what I really like about the current AI trend is we are part of the conversation. We are not left aside. You know, for example, in cars, in planes, in all the previous industrial revolutions, we were just consumers, and then we'll send the raw materials. But now we are part of the conversation. Might not be where we want to be, but definitely we are part of the conversation. And that's what I like. So as long as you're contributing, as long as you're providing value, for me, I think it's good.
Yeah, thank you. That's interesting. So, yeah, the current trend in terms of protecting the intellectual property, it's open source, as Samuel said, and then there's a way you can set it so much that I think that was what Niger Voice did in their work. They said, okay, if you are doing this thing for research, no problem, use it for research to push knowledge system. But if you are not doing this and you want to really use this to build products, then reach out to us. I mean, you have to let's talk in the DM. You know, it's an African thing to not say some things in the public spaces. So I love that idea. So, and it's part of what Samuel just mentioned, how that you can keep it open source, yeah, but rethinking open source is very important too. So, Chris, what would you say, like the best way to monetize your AI solutions? And how have you been able to protect African knowledge system in this when you're collaborating with these big tech companies? What have you done?
Okay, I think I can, yeah, I think I will try to sort of provide an answer that addresses the two questions in one. So I spent a lot of my time as a, I hope the noise behind is not too distracting. I spend a lot of my time as a, oh, sorry, I'm muted. I spend a lot of my time as a science person, and for the past few years, I've found myself learning about business. So like, I think of it as a kind of business, like business is essentially, like buyer and seller, but more like there's a demand of something and then there's a supply of it. So I like to think of, we have this, we have a passion, like, okay, we want greater representation. We want to be in the driver's seat of shaping our African AI. We have all these goals, and that's good. Now, to truly accomplish those goals, it requires business, and sometimes it requires a bit of politics, like politics in the sense of you're talking with people, you're talking with people that have like some kind of, people that manage things, control funding and control stuff. And you have to think about how to, for some of us in that space. So this is not for everybody, right? I'm not saying all of you need to worry about that, but for someone in that space, and I think someone Rutunda can relate to that because he's also been in that space. We have to think about, we have to understand the needs of the people coming to us. So let's call them clients. You have to understand the needs of your clients or your funders. And then we understand the needs of our community. So like Samuel's second question, like balancing the copyright, intellectual copyright, the context of our communities. And then you have to figure out how to balance them so that we get the both. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's a trade-off. Maybe the client gets more than decide so that later you can get more. So it's a very tricky conversation, but I'm glad that we have people who are doing that and doing that with with acknowledgement of the interests and needs of the communities that they serve. So Digital Umuganda is one great example. They've been doing great work in, sort of expanding the Umuganda approach of collecting data. So they've expanded it across Africa, and they're doing a lot of wonderful work in collecting these resources. And like Rutunda said, really sort of creating the raw materials needed to build, to make sure that we Africans are like involved in shaping African AI. Another concrete example I will give you, it's Niger Voices. So when we created our first data set, we had to look for funding. So you see, there's also that part of, I have this great idea, I gotta look for money because you need money to get them things to work. So we had to look for funding, we had to write proposals, we had to talk with people. We got the first funding, thank God. We did the first data set. And then we were approached by some companies, and it's about, okay, so you're approached by a client needs something, And then as an organization, so now you're not just thinking as one person or two people, you're now thinking of a community because you represent a community of people who are looking up to you and relying on getting this done. So what we started thinking as a Niger versus community of, we have our goal to empower people in Nigeria through data, which is data farming. And then we have clients who have needs of data. How can we balance the two? How can we get this? Because you need money to be able to empower people. So you need clients who can actually bring the money, or funders who can give you the money. And so that has been a very interesting journey. And some of the things that we did was we're able to work with clients to using the community to create the data. That way we're providing job opportunities for the community to create data. But then because of the unique way we are sharing our data sets to give back to the community, we had to figure out a way to give back to the community. And one way we figured out was the Language Heritage Program, which is from the data set, we got some proceedings. And so from the data set and from clients, we got some proceedings. Now we use those proceedings to create a language heritage program. So what the language heritage program says is, hey, before you were joining us as an annotator, but now we're giving you a grant to actually go and build your own resources yourself, right? You're not an annotator, you're like the manager now of your project. So you're learning how to manage, bring people together, manage money, manage who you pay and how much. You're actually now learning that experience. So the language heritage program is now how we are balancing, our mandate to give back to the community with the clients. So we take the proceeds and we put in the heritage program, and every year the grant runs. Hopefully this will run more years to come. We started this year and we have 6 grantees, but every year we provide small, it's very small, but small money to people to then manage their own documentation programs. But this is one example of how we are trying to work with clients and their needs, and also keep our promise of what we want to do for communities. And different organizations have their way. I'm sure Dr. Samuel Rutunda has a lot to say there. But this is just some concrete examples. And what I'm trying to say is that it's not easy. It brings you to the realm of sometimes thinking about business, thinking about client, also brings you to the realm of politics, where you're really, I don't mean Nigerian politics. When I say politics, I just mean like, maybe politics is not even the right word, but I just mean like really trying to understand your clients. So to your second question is like, or was it the first? The first one was how to monetize. To monetize something, you need to identify something that clients need and something that they're willing to pay money for. So I really encourage everyone to take like entrepreneurship classes if you want to. I think somewhere you're offering some of them in the context of Linguistic Island, but so
Yes.
or even online, like if there's any entrepreneurship class that teaches you about like being an entrepreneur, I really encourage you to do that, because it really helped me. It helps you to understand clients. Like, I want to build something, okay, but you have to first understand your clients. Who are the people that can pay or fund, and what do they need? And then how can I balance what they're looking for with what I want to do? So these are some ways to also collaboration. So I'm not saying everyone should now go and be an entrepreneur, right? So our paths are different. So maybe you can just collaborate. Like, okay, I want to do this thing. Let me collaborate with Linguistic Island. Let me reach out to someone. Let me reach out to Chris and say, hey, I want to build this. I would like to collaborate. You see? So this is also the power of collaboration.
That's really, really interesting. So you just peeled out one of my secrets, which I will just say quickly. So yeah, I'm definitely preparing a lot of things about entrepreneur route for linguists. I explained that I think you should go and watch Lanfrica's video. We have like a on conference on data business. You will learn a lot. I think I've referred a lot of people to it during this summer school, throughout the summer school. So yes, I have been privileged to have some minute here and there experiences about entrepreneur and how to be an entrepreneur as a linguist. Um, and I have found I've definitely worked on different companies, left some, drop out of some, close down some, and some didn't work, and then just living my life. And then I would really be happy to provide an entrepreneurship class concerning how do you deal with clients and trade-offs. Especially even in this linguistics island, I have had a lot of people talking to me, and I need to marry the idea that okay, I'm creating a linguistic community that is working on their language. That is my idea. Working on your language, you have the tools of technological tools, and the native intuition is there. There is no how you build something. There is no how you speak a language that you would never need a native speaker. And that is the advantage we have in Africa. We have a lot of languages and we have the population of native speakers. So maybe we should begin to think about entrepreneur. How can you be an entrepreneur, a language entrepreneur? And that is my idea about the data business thing. So yeah, sure. I would definitely be happy in some time, I don't know when, to like explain some things about language entrepreneurship program. And you can definitely go online too and just take entrepreneurship classes as Chris suggested. So then I would now read one question here from the chat that says, what do you think differentiates a successful language technology startup from the one that struggles? I would add to that, do you think we can have a Google company that is Africa? Do you think, see, I've been nursing this idea for a long time. I've been thinking, do you think there will be a time in the future, just in the nearest future, where we would have Google, like, I don't mean Google, I mean a company like Apple, a company like Microsoft from Africa?
I will do you one better. Do you think we need a Google or Apple for Africa?
I think so.
Because
how it would
I feel
work
like the African landscape is really
different.
Like
Yeah.
Google and Apple, like such companies. So in Silicon Valley, it's really about, it's like I want to be the largest ever. I want to control as many things as I can. I want to provide, so the larger the
Right.
audience, the larger the people you're offering value to, the better, the more money, the more so investors in Silicon Valley also want to invest in something that has a wide mass of offering so they can make a lot of money. But I feel like African landscape is just too complicated for that. But let's see. I mean, we have the telcos, right? You have major telcos in Africa. I think I guess if to answer my question of do we need, or maybe can we have, I would say maybe let's look at other industries like maybe the telcos and see, are there like, you have MTN. I think MTN is South Africa, Nigeria, and I don't really know much about telcos, but I would say I would look at the telcos to see if there are major monopolies there, then maybe it's possible. You just need to be very brutal. But look at what monopolization in the telco is sort of doing for the African continent. Up to now, you don't have good internet anywhere. And it's really because of the monopolization of the telcos, and they've sort of entered government and regulation. So it's hard for anyone to sort of diversify. So I think the US is different because the US allows like kind of free competition. Like you can come in, provide a really good product and like become the best. Like you can think of how Apple came. They were already phone companies. Apple came, provided a really good company, a really good product, and they like took the major market. But like there's like room for competitors to come in. Even with the AI, you had OpenAI, ChatGPT, but there's Anthropic came in, Perplexity came in. But I kind of feel like I feel like Africa is too rigid. If someone monopolizes, they will control the product, control the government, control the regulation, and make it that no one else can come in. So it's no longer free competition where if you have a good product, then you become the best. It's now if you know the president's daughter, or if you know this person, you know, or you know the head of this, then you become the best. It's no longer free competition. And then it just ruins the whole idea of being the best. Being the best is no longer about offering the best service. It's about having the most connection to the pockets of the people in the heads. And that is not productive. That's not a productive way of being the best. So I think why it works in US is because there's free competition at the very least. And free competition means you can have Amazon, but another company can just come in, really do well with a good product and become the best. Because yes, of course, I'm not saying America is corruption free, but to an extent, there is free competition. But in Africa, there isn't free competition, I think. I was reading a book about like AI and Africa, and the book made an interesting connection. It said a lot of the AI has not entered Africa very well.
True.
Because a lot of us technology, when we say, oh, AI has not penetrated Africa, why? We said data. But this book said, why? It's internet. The level of internet connectivity we have. Because for you to have data, you need internet. Internet is what created this big data, right? Internet of things, internet connected devices. My printer is connected to the internet. My AC is internet. My DSTV is internet, and I can use internet. So it creates that big data thing that then leads to data that we can create stuff. But if you don't have internet, then you already is like bottleneck. And that's the problem in Africa. And the book said the problem with the internet in Africa is regulation. You have the monopolies, and then each country is like, oh, here's our regulation for for telecommunication, but it's corruption. It's just real corruption. And the monopoly, what they do, so they gave an example with Ethiopia. Ethiopia has their own national this is being recorded, right? I should be careful the words I use. Anyway, I'm not in Africa. I'll be fine. It really went with each country. Look at Nigeria, look at Ethiopia, and it showed examples of how each country is like, let's create our regulation for like telecommunication and internet. But what ends up happening is it just services one company that's like maybe the national company, and then closes the door for any other person, any other company to come in. Just completely closes the door, telling you need 1 year or 10 years of license. You need to pay millions of dollars. Just completely closes the door. And so these one of few companies are now dominating everything. And because if there's no competition, there is no push to improve the quality of your service. So because there's no competition, you can be subscribing 50,000 naira for MTN or Glow internet and be getting less than 1 megabyte per second, or Ethiopia getting, you see, so, and then you just keep the whole cycle. So that's kind of why I'm really thinking like, do we need a Google? Because, if you're not in an environment of free competition, then you're not going to have a Google. You're going to have a Tinubu or a dictator. The oldest president is it Cameroon that has the oldest president that has been running for like since he was young, and now he's old. So you're going to have a dictatorship. You're not going to have a Google in the sense of, oh, Google really offers a very good service, so a lot of people like Google. Right? That's why Google is there. It's not because Google has the president's number. They offer a really good service. A lot of people like Google. Apple offers a really good product. A lot of people like Apple. So if you have that in Africa, it's not going to be like that. Like this offers a good service. It's going to be this has the most connections to all the presidents. And they have closed all the doors with regulation, and they are the only ones you're stuck with. So that's kind of how I feel about your question. I'd love to hear how. And electricity too. And you can really, if you look at some of the infrastructure that is not doing very well in Africa, electricity, internet, if you really look around, it's really this integral problem of control and lack of free competition. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so you are saying that what differentiates a successful language technology company from the ones struggling? It's clear, right? I think you get your question, Melako, by you, that Chris was hitting it on the head.
I wasn't really answering that directly. I think I was really more about the Google thing. Do we need a Google in Africa? What differentiates a successful language from the one struggle? I'm not saying what differentiates is whether they have connections to president. It's quite hard to answer. I mean, I'm tempted to say, I guess struggling means, so from my experience as an entrepreneur, a lot of things come down to money, right? You need money as a company, as a business. So I think most times when you say something is struggling, it's like it's struggling to make money or it's struggling to get money somehow. So it comes down to money, but I'm not saying it's just only money. There's a lot of different factors that affect money. So like maybe the client, maybe the how many, like, no way, this might not be a good idea. Yeah. And so also sometimes, sadly, on the African continent, it's just connection. It's still that same thing of who you know and who you know, and also getting yourself out there. So this is why, like previously, I said, really work on putting yourself out there, putting your brand, your company's brand, getting it out there, because sometimes you could be doing really great work and no one knows. And the people who can help you don't know. So really, brand presence is kind of my answer to you, Melako, is branding, like brand presence. Are you getting your company to the people who should know about your company? That's also something I'm learning right now with Lanfrica. It's not just, oh, we're doing a great stuff, people know, but no, it should get known to the people who should know, and the people who should know are those that can help you with getting the funding that you need. Of course, before you talk about money as an entrepreneur or as a person who is building something, the most important thing is your product. Are you offering a product that people want, people need, and a product that helps people? So like before everything I said, the product is important. So one differentiator could be the product. That's the example with Google and Apple. These are companies that came to the market, saw what was happening, and offered a very good product. So the product really matters. Like, what are you offering to people? What service are you? So always think of how to differentiate yourself. If you are in the translator business, how can you differentiate your business as a translator? What do you offer? If you are in the data creation business, how do you differentiate yourself from data creators? So think about your product and how to differentiate yourself. That could be a differentiating factor. And then funding. So product and funding. That's for Melako.
Thank you so very much. That was really profound. Rutunda, what do you have to say to this?
Yeah, success and struggle, it's a complex question, to be honest. There are a lot of things involved, and I think Chris has mentioned a lot of it, including what you offer and the market and the connection. Yeah, and to be honest, it's something we are still trying to learn. However, for me, and partly I can say I'm an idealist. I'll just go back to what I said. How are we contributing? How are we adding value? So I think if you have that as a North Star, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean you might succeed. You might not have the right connections. You might not have the right access. Yeah, or just plain bad luck. But I think overall, there will be a positive shift. Yeah, and I'm looking also in terms of the ecosystem that we are trying to build. And I will say my framework currently is we are in the fourth industrial revolution. There have been previous industrial revolutions. They are their good, they are their bad. But how do we contribute within this fourth industrial revolution? Given that it's a global audience, so you might target the global world. And to be honest, I think generally speaking, when you work within the global audience, there is more money. But if you can bring value to the local context, and I think it's what has brought us here, long term, there's much benefit. Yeah, so I'm still exploring this idea, the fourth industrial revolution, the language technology implications, low resource settings. These are concepts I'm still thinking about, but I'm really looking at how do I add value? How do I contribute? How do I help? Yeah, whether you go through the entrepreneur path or whether you go through any other path, is how do we help? And for example, the entrepreneur, they see a gap. They say, oh, I can see this gap, and I believe I have the capacity and the competency to do it. And then they also take the risk. So if you feel that's where you are fitting, you should go for it. As for the next Google, yeah, if the next Google will add value, yeah, that's fine. If Africa is a big continent, it's a complex continent, we'll see. But for me, looking at within the ecosystem is how much value are we going to contribute.
Thank you. That's interesting. So I have another question here. Please, do you think AI plays a role in collecting and creating data sets? If yes, how? Can you point me to a resource that talks about that? Who knows? Okay, from my end, I would say it's possible to have synthetic data, for example. If you read works of Stephen Bird I think he's in Australia, he has a lot of ideas about data. So I got ignited about data from him and Samuel Kimbo at University of Toronto. But first from Stephen Bird about data, why data is important. He does language documentation. I think he even has an idea that he wants to create data that will be in the space so much that even if anything happened to Earth, people can still access the data. That is how much he's investing in thinking about data. So if you want to know how, I think you should read Stephen Bird's work. You can search him he has a lot of publication on data. That is what I have read and has informed me about thinking about it. But I don't know what Rutunda or Chris have to say about this.
The question was how to...
Do you think AI plays a role in collecting and creating data sets? If yes, how? Can you point me to a resource that talks about the how?
Okay, I see. I guess it depends on what you mean playing a role. So you mean like AI helping in the collection of the data sets, and if that's what you mean by playing a role, because you are creating the data sets in a way to build AI. So there is also that aspect of the role of AI in data set is that you're creating the data set for AI. So you also think about like what your AI is about and what you're putting this AI for, and that influences the kinds of data set that you build. So there is that aspect of how it influences. Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Yeah. Do we have Rutunda? Do you have anything to say? Thank you, Chris. That's interesting. Yes.
I'm thinking human in the loop. So, at first when you create the data, you use humans, but at some point, maybe you can use the model already to give you some answer, and then you add some humans to evaluate. And then now in these days, day and age, there is some synthetic data. I believe there's some work, Chris, they were working on where, yeah, I'm trying to remember that work, but where you might not necessarily have humans in it. It's a technique. they were working on back in the days. But yeah, personally, I think human in the loop is coming. So, for example, translation in the past, you needed just translation, but now you have a translation and then the machine translation, and then you just validate the answer.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. Now we are out of time. It's past the slated time. So I don't know if there is any hanging question. Do you want me to? Okay, no. So I have a question. Sorry. Have you ever been felt underpaid? Have you ever been or felt underpaid by your clients? If yes, how did you handle the situation? So sorry, we won't be able to take all questions, but we'll try to take the few ones we can because we're already out of time. But I don't know who would answer this. Have you ever been or felt underpaid by your clients? If yes, how did you handle the situation?
Yeah, let me tackle that. There is the thing, you can win a battle and lose the war, or you can lose a battle and win the war. So it depends on how you look at it. Uh, it's a learning experience. Um, but then also within the market, you get what you negotiated. So I think we just need to negotiate better and have better leverage. So how can these people need me more than I need them? So
True.
the more they need you, the more you can get the better of it. And that's why we really need to improve. We really need to work on ourselves. And I think part of this program is to show you how you can do it.
Right. Thank you. Chris, do you have one or two things to say concerning that?
Nothing new. I really agree with Dr. Rutunda. It is a learning experience. So have you ever, it's definitely yes. I mean, it's a yes. I cannot say no. I may not know the exact time, but it's a definite yes. And how did I handle it? Well, it's sad, or depending on how you look at it, win the war, lose the battle, win the battle, lose the war. But it's a learning experience. And I think the most important thing is really embracing the learning experience and saying, okay, next time, this is how I'm going to handle this. So every learning experience is a chance for you to learn something, because the opportunity will come next time to test if you actually learned the experience. So that's how
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah, so we have some questions for Chris, but before I read those questions, Saad, you have your hand raised before this question. Can you just give us
Yes,
quickly?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. So regarding the question I dropped in the chat box, I think maybe I did not write it in the best way for them to understand. What I mean is that can you use an AI to develop, to create a data set or to, collect it? How can you leverage it? If yes, please. How?
Short answer is, I think yes, and I don't know how, and I would be keen to see how, like, for us, figure out how. That's kind of it. Like, I think yes, and I think there's room there. But how exactly, I would leave that to you to figure it out, or to collaborate and figure it out. That's how I'll put the answer.
Interesting. Yeah, Rutunda, you want to say one or two things?
I think I wrote in the comment, and probably, I don't know if Chris has something to say. There was a work they were doing that interested me called active learning. And it was looking at least to my understanding, how to have minimal human interaction where the model can learn from themselves. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it was Chris. I don't know if it's you who worked on it or it was.
I was
Yeah,
doing active learning, but maybe I know that Bonner was also doing it back then. So I don't know who you're referring
yeah,
to. Might be me and Bonner, but I was into active
yes.
learning back then, those days.
Yeah.
It
So
did. It did
yeah.
not work.
No, it's not that it worked. It's just I'm saying those days because it's amazing how the field has changed. Like couple of years ago, it was like,
Mhm.
yeah, and now everything has just changed. You have large models, the GPTs, and just doing so many things that are just, different scales. So a lot of things have sort of changed in how now we're in prompt engineering, and like it's all about the prompting and chain of thought, right? So things have changed. I'm not saying it did not work. I'm just saying that things have changed. And yeah, I was doing active learning in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
I
think
mean,
now,
even right now, so the thing you said, active learning, where the machines are kind of learning from themselves. I
in
think even
context.
right now in this it has changed. So now is like agentic. You
Yes.
might have heard the word agentic AI. Some people will say, well, we're now in the world of agents. And I think we're really getting there where, we've left, it's now by experience. We're no longer using training data. And this is also something for folks who are looking for like the next big cool thing. If you want to know about it and we could talk about it, there's this idea that models have learned on all the data in the world, on the internet, the text data, and because the thing with models is you can spend like 10 years amassing like 10 petabytes of data. But once you train the model on that data, that's it. The model doesn't need to be trained on that data anymore. Like it's done. So we trained models on the whole internet data, and now we're done with the internet. So what's the next thing for the models? Because they have to keep learning, and we want to let them, even with learning on the whole internet, they're not doing so well. And so there's this idea that we're now in the age of experience. So the model now learns by doing experience. So Samuel Rutunda, you can see how active learning has now changed. Because active learning back then was the model is learning from the data. So it's the model is knowing which parts of the data to focus on to learn. But now it's no longer that. It's now about the model is learning from experience and interacting with different components to get experience. Just like for the way, whenever you type things on ChatGPT, do me this, do me that, they're saving all those things somewhere. And sometimes depending on, well, it's these people. So let's assume, hope not, but they could be using that to train, to improve the model. So that's experience. Another idea of experience is we're getting to a world where you will be interacting with this AI not just on your screen on the browser anymore, but you could have like you could like tell it to, like book a flight for me, and it actually like goes to the tab and tries to book the flight. And if we're trying to build such things, what's the data going to look like for that kind of training? So it's more like experience data. So the field is just
Brilliant.
changing and
Brilliant.
evolving.
Brilliant. Yeah. So about the agent, I think so in this summer school, we have been doing something called Aproko session. So when we are done with the whole class and we just chat afterwards. So if you are attending one of these Aproko sections, I was explaining something on agents and how I've been doing something around agents and data agent and stuff like that. Yes, I have, maybe I should just share one idea. So the internet is filled with data, but the internet is not filled with human interactive data. So a lot of data are there, but a lot of data don't inform humans. So what I mean by that is that we need data that needs physical experience. So let me give you an example. In Yoruba, for example, I will go back to my tone allusion. I can allude to a tone. In Yoruba, we use high tone to mean something that is big. We use mid tone to mean something that is medium big, and we use low tone to mean something that is extremely big. So you have a simple word and it has different reference. So now I can't learn just the tone alone. I must learn the tone and map it to an experience that I have. So, and it can be anything big, and the big can be relative. For example, when a human is big, it's not when a tree is big, and it's not when a table is big, it's not when a laptop is big. So, and there are different nuances. So we would need, if we have trained, and we assume we've trained, we will need experience. And the experience with that, okay, I have seen this word. What was my experience with it in that sense? That is just one example I would give. And there are thousands of them that I have in my notes concerning how we can build agentic and experience-based data set for AI agents. So now Rutunda wants to say one or two things. I will give you.
Yes, unfortunately, I will have to go. I have
Yeah.
right now a trip I should make. Thank you, Samuel, for inviting me. It was really wonderful to see such a big community. I remember someone has been talking to me about it. It was such a huge opportunity for me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see you guys reach the height, which I know you will. Thank you always, Chris. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll uh, we'll meet each other talking about higher things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Samuel, for coming around. We are so grateful to have you. I don't know whether Chris is interested in answering these questions. About what inspired Niger Voice, what purpose was Niger Voices originally created for, what does it what and does it still serve the same purpose? Does Lanfrica have the same object as Niger Voices? So these are
Yeah,
your questions. I don't know whether you want to answer them before we just
yes,
close the
those would
chat.
be my last question because I also need to leave, but I can try to answer those. I will be probably a bit fast. What inspired Niger Voices? It's very interesting. Like I remember I was talking with Abraham. Abraham is the technical lead for Niger Voices, and I was telling him how like I see a lot of projects and they're like saying, oh, we're gonna do this for African languages. We're gonna like make machines understand African languages. And then they just like build a data set of like 2 hours or 10 hours or 30 hours. And I was telling him like, it's interesting. Like, I don't know whether it's like the ambition is there or whether it's just about trying to make the thing sound big. But I digress. What inspired Niger Voices was I I got into AI and NLP and trying to do things for my languages. Then I entered into speech. I realized that, okay, if you really want to do something for these African languages, it needs to be acoustic. You need to look at the speech side. Enough of text, text, text. We need to look at the speech. I remember thinking that there's already a lot of work being done for my languages, so Nigerian languages and speech. I remember trying to find my first speech data set for Igbo, and I couldn't find anything online. And I was so surprised because I always thought that, there's like people doing stuff already, so it should be there. And then I did some kind of study trying to understand different Nigerian languages, and I saw like, okay, there's like 10 hours here for Igbo, 40 hours here, 10 hours here so they're just small hours. And I remember thinking that these hours are good, 10, 15, but they're only ever good for research. Like you can only use them to like analyze something or do some research. Like you can't ever expect to build, it's like, because there's difference between research and deployment. So you can do AI for research and you can do AI for deployment. AI for research means like I'm going to do some analysis to understand something about AI or the language, and then I put in a paper. AI for deployment means I'm actually going to build something that people will use. So I kept thinking, for AI for deployment, you can't do much with this 10 hours, 20 hours here and there. Like it's too small. And I remember I was asking myself, why don't we have a large African data set? Like, why? Why hasn't that happened? And I remember thinking about that for a while. One thing that inspired me that, yeah, it's possible was digital Umuganda, because around that time, they then created like a 1,000-hour King Rwanda data set. And that back then, that was the largest African data set on Common Voice. Like it was the largest. And so I was like, okay, it is possible. And yeah, so with Niger Voices, it was me trying to make, like, I noticed that Igbo doesn't have any speech. And I was like, I need to do something about it. So we started doing like Igbo BK, like some community projects to get people to record on Igbo. And then I realized, okay, what if we can do more? What if we can actually involve more community? What if we can think about how we share this data that can actually help the community who is building the data? And then more importantly, what if we can make the data set actually large and cultural? There's another angle to making it large. There's a business angle. if you come to a client and you say, I have 10 hours of data, you have very little bargaining power. But if you have 1,000 hours of data, your bargaining power increases. So back then, because of like AI needed more data, back then, the larger the data you have, the more bargaining power there is. And you can just think of it in the music industry. Like if you have one artist trying to bargain versus a music label that represents various artists now trying to bargain something, you can kind of see how that kind of works. So with Niger Voices, like it's even in the title, we wanted to create we wanted to show that it was possible to create a large data set for the African Nigerian context. We wanted the data set to be large, to be cultural. So it's not just scraping text from the internet, but really cultural that, embodies the way people talk and the things they talk about in Nigeria. And we wanted the data set to be high quality. A lot of people told us that, oh, if your data set is large, it will not be high quality. If you want it to be high quality, you have to bring them to create a studio, and they come to the studio in Lagos and they come one by one and they sit down and record, and you record them one by one. That's the only way to create high quality. So we wanted to debunk that and say, no, we can actually think of how to create high quality and still make it large. Let's go back and figure out how. And that's kind of what happened. Then the other inspiration for Niger Voices is we want people to stop extracting us from our data. We want people to stop, come, collect data, and bye-bye. And the people who created the data are just like there. You have like students. You have students who are looking for, like, they want to job, they want to job out, they want to study somewhere. You have people who are looking for work. These are the people who make up the data community. So how can we empower them sustainably over time? Not just I come, I give you 500 and I give you money, tell you record for me, okay, bye-bye, And that's what has been happening back then during my time. But we wanted to create a community and think of how we can continue to benefit this community over time. And I really learned that benefit is not money. It's about career opportunities, job opportunities, collaboration, connections. So we really wanted to create a space where we can help uplift people. And the people we're talking about are the people who help to create this data set. So these are the objectives of Niger Voices and Lanfrica. So yes, they are the same objectives. And right now we're still serving the same purpose because we have Niger Voices. And so you get Niger Voices, Voice Africa, another data set we built with communities, language heritage program, the one we're doing now, which is now, instead of like you were an analyst for us before, now you are a leader. You're actually leading your own project. And we're really thinking of more things to do. And besides that, we're also, we've been sharing out like a host of programs like the data business that Samuel mentioned, where we're like empowering people with training, with knowledge on like, here's how to think about data as a business. Here's how to like make money with data. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. So yeah, so I encourage everyone, be part of the community. It's very simple. Just go to nigervoices.com. We have a Telegram group. That's where everyone stays, and then really reach out, whatever, collaboration, feedback, anything. And yes, the data set is open source. Like you can openly access it as a researcher. So we tend to put the .com and not the Hugging Face because .com has like the process. So if you go to .com, you have a video that just kind of explains everything to you. And then you go to each data set and there's like instructions on what to do. So yeah.
Yeah. So apart from the fact that the data is good for NLP thing, it's also good for acoustic studies in linguistics, phonetic studies. You want to check how participants pronounce "ah" in their language. You have the Hausa, you have the Igbo, and you have Yoruba. You can put them together. I have tried to experiment that actually. I told Chris, where's the data? He said you can access them here, and I did. I just did one or two things, and I know that you can actually extract. There's a platform called WebMouse where it can do the automatic alignment for you, but it's just a different tutorial entirely. But definitely you can use it for linguistic studies.
And if
Now,
anyone is interested in doing any collaboration, study, research, anything, please reach out.
sure. Chris is always open, very, very open to. I have disturbed him a lot of different
Yeah.
ideas, different
As
ideas.
long as you are passionate and hardworking, I would love to work with you. And passionate because you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Hardworking because I'm not going to do any of the work for you. I'm going to tell you what to do and watch you. And if you do it, then we talk. If you don't do it, then so I'm very busy, but I'm open to really helping and guiding. You got to be passionate and hardworking, and love to work with you. Okay, how do you reach out? I mean, you can. Thank you. Yeah, I don't really use LinkedIn for reaching out, but if you write me anywhere and you say Linguistic Island or context of this, I will know it's you. So if you just connect with me on LinkedIn, I will not accept it because I get a lot of spam. But if you tell me, hey, context of this, then I will do that. Or if you use my email, yes, thank you, then I will definitely respond. All right.
Yeah, thank you so very much for that insightful section. Thank you everyone for coming around. We'll be closing it now. It was a good ride. Thank you, Chris, for coming out. We are so grateful. So I will stop recording.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening and day. Thank you very much, Samuel Laraju, for the invitation. Thank you, Saad, and thank you all for organizing this. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
You too.
God bless you.